Hey, good morning to those of you out there on the East Coast, on the West Coast, on the West Coast. You would think this is my first time doing this. Uh, Good morning to those of you out there on the West Coast. Good afternoon to those of you here on the East Coast with me. It's a beautiful day. I think my mind is outside trying to walk around and sail or something. We're going to get started here in just a second. Let me turn off some of these captions here. I appreciate you engaging in chat. One of the things I just wanted to say to those of you here early and on time, if you're tracking your visibility score on govconinAbox.com and you're trying to get to 100, reach out to me. Let me know. Send me a LinkedIn message. And I'm happy to sit there and give you very specific guidance. I was helping somebody the other day, and rather than say, well, consider doing this and this, I just wrote them a quick couple of sentences. And I said, if you add this, it'll kind of highlight what you do for the government and it'll get you to the score 100. If that's something you're interested in having me do, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to do it really quick. Okay, let's get diving into today's training. We got some good stuff in. And today we're going to be talking about which contracts are out there with the Trump administration doing these executive orders and changing up the entire federal agency. Like HHS was just, put out a notice saying they're going to consolidate, with DOGE doing everything that DOGE is doing related to cutting contracts, cutting spending in different areas. When we look around at all these contracts, it can get a little confusing about where do I go next? What's my strategy for 2025 with this new reality of government contracting? And so we're going to dive into that. And one of the things that I really want people to think is, I wrote this line when I sent the invite out for today's event. I said, you not only need to think outside the box, you need to realize there is no box. Don't even limit yourself with a box. And this comes from a movie called The Matrix. Keanu Reeves did a movie series, trilogy plus one. But if you haven't watched it, there's this scene in there when he's coming to realize whether he's the one and whether he's got these special powers, et cetera. Anyways, he runs into this kid and all these kids are sitting in there and maybe one of them is the one. And this kid's holding a spoon and he's just looking at it and the spoon bends and it comes back. And so Keanu picks up the spoon. He's trying to do this. And the kid looks at me and goes, basically he says, the trick is you got to realize there is no spoon. When you realize there's no spoon, you can realize you can do anything with that. And I kind of want you to do the same thing, right? We think within the box. That means we think so bureaucratically like the federal buyers. That's inside the box. And then for the last, before yesterday, let's say, or before the Trump administration started, there was kind of this outside of the box where, we're pretty creative, but we're outside the box, but we're still kind of holding the box. We're still touching it, but we're like, hey, we're outside the box. We're really got these creative ideas. And what I want you to do is to realize there is no box. When you're thinking about what contracts you can go after, how you can help the federal government, not only do they need this from you, but for your success, you need to be able to think and look at ideas and ways that you can help the federal government in a way where you realize there is no box. And so if you understand that, put that into the chat. Just put, there is no box in the chat. That'll drive everybody else on LinkedIn crazy when they see your comment. It's like, what do you mean there's no box? What? But go ahead and put that in. There is no box. Shout out to Keanu Reeves for bringing training material right into GovCon. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to win what I call DOGE-approved contracts. And basically what this means is right now, DOGE is looking everywhere trying to cut spending. I mean, Elon Musk was on TV yesterday, the day before, and I would highly recommend you watch it. It was on Fox News, and I'm not picking media sides or something, but it was the first time I saw him sit down with other leaders within the DOGE community, and I was able to see what they're doing. And that's a very important thing to be able to do, is to see what your customers are thinking or hear what your customers are thinking. But anyways, he is very committed to trying to cut $1 trillion, and not long-term kind of a plan. He's trying to cut it within, I think he's got 130 more days, right? And the impact and all that stuff aside for 1 second, when you realize that your customer, and Elon works for Trump and Trump is our customer if we're selling to the federal government, then we need to understand what they're thinking. And right now, DOGE is thinking, should I keep that contract or cut it? And you've seen this. I know you've been around long enough to be able to see this. And so I want you to be able to identify or think about contracts in a way that is DOGE approved. So if they come across like, oh, that's good, let's move on. right? And I've always said this, it's a subliminal process with your customer that you want to be able to make them subliminally just be choosing you. And sometimes they don't realize why they're choosing you. So today's training on which contracts I think can survive this DOGE period. I'm going to break the training up into 3 areas. First off, which contracts are safe? And this is from a very, very high level, right? I'm not saying this contract and this contract, but how do you look holistically at the government contract spend and go, which contracts are safe? So we'll talk about that. Then I want to talk to you about how to identify contracts or work types that are out there that DOGE would approve. And that's really important, right? If we're going to spend our time knocking on doors and pursuing opportunities, et cetera, we should make sure that they're not going to be on the chopping block. And then the third thing I want to wrap up with is AI, right? AI is here to stay. And literally that's what DOGE is driving forward with. That is their enabler to a lot of the things they're doing, especially with data. They're able to take the data and do something with it with AI. But more importantly, every one of us, you in particular, right, need to have an AI play to your company. It doesn't matter whether you're doing cybersecurity where you could see where AI might fit, or you're doing restroom and bathroom cleaning services. Every one of us can have an AI play, and there's ways to look at that and to figure that out. You've got to figure it out for yourself, but I'll talk about why that's important and maybe give you a couple of ideas to get you going. So that's what we're going to cover down on today. If you don't know who I am, my name is Neil McDonald. I am the president of the GovCon Chamber of Commerce, co-founder of GovCon in a Box, and I want to welcome you to my federal sales training where I provide tips for success in the federal market. I spent 20 years in the federal market after I got out of the Army as a small business government contractor. And since 2018, I've been teaching people like you that government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. When we follow a process A to Z, we have repeatable, predictable results. This is what I want for you, and this is why I come back and do this training over and over again. If you're not following me on LinkedIn already, come follow me on LinkedIn. I appreciate you being on YouTube and other places, or maybe even here on LinkedIn and you're not even following me yet. But when you follow me, you'll get notified of opportunities and information I share. But also, when you come over to LinkedIn, if you're not on this platform, you can engage with Brandy and Craig and Vanessa and others who are in here. This is your community. These are the people who are also in the GovCon space. So, you can kind of piggyback off of my event and go build relationships with them, which is great. Subscribe to my newsletter. It's the Government Contracting Success newsletter. I put out nothing but government contracting related information to help you with sales in particular is the area I really try to stick around, business development and capture. And then last thing is I had to move yesterday's training on the 27th because I had a whole power outage and all this. So I moved it to Monday. If you haven't registered already, join that. I think there's 150 people registered, so it's a good chance to network as well. All right. If you haven't checked your visibility score, check it at govconinabox.com. I want to congratulate all these companies who are in the federal or in the 100 Club. The 100 Club are companies that have a score of 100 out of 100 in the federal visibility score. And what this means is that they're visible to federal buyers in the very tools that the government's looking at. So I'm not trying to create a unique tool that this is where you store data. No, I'm saying that's where the government is looking. It's their tool. We're just giving you easy visibility. Plus you can get guidance, like I mentioned, on how to improve your score. So go check that out at govconinabox.com. If you're struggling to get to 100, just reach out to me. Send me a message on LinkedIn here. I will come back and give you exact tips on how to get right to 100 so that you can do it very fast. Okay, let's get diving into those 3 bullets that I talked about. The first one is which contracts are the best out there? Which ones should you be looking? And that's a very high level title, right? It's sometimes hard to hit a title with the slides. But what I was really trying to point out is this idea of essential versus non-essential contracts. So essential services are mission critical, where non-essential are more the support services. An example of mission critical means if the Army's job is to fight and win our nation's wars, then anything related to their ability to do that is essential work or mission critical. And so that, by the way, when I say essential work, that is not just government contracting. That's also the government themselves. So if they have employees and there's a government shutdown, there's essential work that must continue. And there's non-essential work that won't continue. And so in the federal government, those people get furloughed or whatever it's called when they're like on temporary leave and they're not getting paid. And us contractors, if we're essential, we continue to do the work. And if we're non-essential, our contract's paused. The only difference is usually the government employee gets paid back pay, and us contractors don't ever get any of that. I will tell you, I built my last business specifically targeting essential services so that I never had any of my contracts impacted. I always tied it. For example, the VA was a big customer of ours. I tied the work we were doing to supporting the veteran health. We were in the Veteran Health Administration mostly, and tied it directly to veteran health. Well, that's a really easy way to see that it's essential services for the VA. So you want to do that same thing, is think about what's essential for the target agency you're selling into and what's not essential. A very easy way to figure this out for yourself, you can go watch previous training I did a couple of weeks ago where I did the Army, Air Force, HHS, and VA, I think. But you can go into any organization in the federal government, and almost all of them on their website have a document that describes, I can't remember the general title, but basically it says what to do in case of a government shutdown, right? What work is essential and what's not. That kind of paper, you can find it on any given website, and or just call the small business specialist and ask for that. Really, you can contact any point of contact within your target agency, and they'll be able to share that with you. It's a public-facing information. But then you can look at it and begin to understand what does that agency consider essential and what does it consider non-essential. You want to be going after the best contracts to go after are essential contracts, mission-critical contracts. I put a couple of high-level federal descriptions of work here for you to understand. Anything on the defense and national security side is not going to be touched. I mean, the budget just got passed and the defense part of it got increased, right? And so there is not going to be a slowdown on defense or national security spending. And so that's a good area to be in. And this is a very high level because, by the way, when I say defense, I don't mean the Army. If you go into the Army, there's still critical, mission critical or support services. There's essential and non-essential. What I mean is that defense is a big area. Compared that to Department of Education or climate control and EPA, those are less of a thing. And I'm not here to opine on it. I'm saying as a sales guy, when I'm creating a strategy for my customers, that's where I look. It's like you can like the EPA all day long. My wife is an environmental scientist, right? But when I look at the EPA, I can see they're going to be gutted. And as a strategy guy, I know that I want to go over to like defense or national security. Second one is public health and safety. HHS just talked about reducing their footprint from 82,000 employees to 62,000 employees. This is going to be a big change. They're going to reduce the number of divisions they have, kind of agency and quasi-agencies within the HHS. They're going to reduce it down from like 26 or something to 16. Those are loose numbers. You can go to their website and see the exact. But the point is, even when they do that, though, they're still committed. So they say at the moment, they're still committed to public health and safety. And that is their mission critical focus, right? When I say the Army's job is to fight this nation's wars and win them. In HHS, they're about public health and safety, right? So that mission's still going to be there. Energy and utility is a huge one, right? What type of energy might switch around, but these are huge. These are mission critical things. The infrastructure of our country is vital on there. And even, by the way, when you think about facility support services, you tie your facility support services to maybe less GSA buildings and more of some of these other buildings that aren't going to come down, or campuses. Like in the VA, those campuses aren't going away. So in the VA, you can be sure that there's going to be janitorial type projects, right? I tend to play in the professional services and IT services, but you can take this guidance around the horn there. And then the last one is transportation and logistics, right? And you can almost slide in supply chain into that mix as well. Okay, so from a high level, that was my big takeaway from that last slide was just really understand what's the difference between essential and non-essential, and where do you fit in that mix, and how do you begin to change what you do. Here, I wanted to help you identify, like, how can you identify contracts that are out there, right? That you should be pursuing, et cetera, things you could be looking at. And again, this goes back to really professional services and IT, but some of it, like I lost it. But, this idea of pricing, right? And I'll come back to that in a second. That can go across everybody. The whole idea of DOGE is Department of Government Efficiency. And for them, they're looking at efficiency in like the number of contracts, but they're also looking at the rates, et cetera. So some major projects that I put here that you can see across every agency, and you should be figuring out, where do I align with this? One is IT modernization and a reduction of systems. I was listening to DOGE talk about how, I can't remember if it was an HHS or maybe it was Department of Interior, but they had like 400 IT systems. And the thing is, I don't need to hear this from DOGE. I've been a government contractor for the last 20 years, and that's how 30 years almost, that's how I made my money, right? Is all these systems. And my last one of our strengths was this ability to get systems that couldn't talk to each other to come talk through SharePoint, which is our world. And so we would kind of do that. Well, that's crazy though. That's part of the inefficiency they're trying to attack. And so IT modernization is, how do we compete against China and our other adversaries on the newest modern technology? And reduction of systems, reducing the number of systems we have. Well, we don't need systems that are all identical across the board. I was having this debate with my wife, who used to be in the intelligence side, and in there, they have multiple systems. And I was talking about consolidating them. She was talking about, well, they need to be separate. I'm like, well, we can still protect it, right? Well, this is the discussion that needs to happen in there. And so if you look at that, she and I were talking about something, she worked on a huge project, and that was a super sophisticated, very sensitive type of thing. But those systems that I talk about aren't just systems that are only in the IT world that are really specialized or enterprise. There's a lot of low-level systems. And if you can identify those because you do the type of work and you can figure out how to begin to consolidate it, well, that's a good contract type of work you want to go after. The second thing, it kind of goes a little bit along the lines with number one, but digitizing the government's process. One of the biggest DOGE examples right now is there's a mine in Pennsylvania where they put all these documents from the retirement process for federal employees. And it sounds like this sensational story, right? But I'll tell you how bad this really is. Back in 1996, right? I've been doing this a while, but back in 1996, I won an award, the highest civilian award for the lowest ranking guy. I was the lowest ranking guy in peacetime there. And it was for helping Fort Lewis, Washington become paperless. I mean, literally, it was the paperless office is what we used to call it back in the 90s. And to have that still here, to have the process of the administrative activities of awards or retirement or anything else, not only is it paper, which is bad, but paper automatically makes it more manual and slows the entire process down, which means anybody you're trying to serve is getting worse service. So if you can look into your customers, if you can look at what you offer and go, well, how can I have a component of digitization? One of the easiest ways to understand digitization, which is a very fun word to say, one of the fun things about that, though, is you can look in and just go, what don't I like? What's moving too slow? And when you identify that, then you're able to sit there and identify a solution. And you can move back and you can team up with other people and find out. By the way, let me know if you do services but you don't know IT. I'm happy to make an introduction to somebody I know in the community, and just that way you guys can go off and running. All right, number three, just keeping up to speed here, is consolidation of redundant services. This is a huge deal. I used to get furious at this in the VA when I supported them, is they would have redundant services in every one of the 150 hospitals. I'm like, let me build you an enterprise solution here for them all, and I can allow them to have dynamic flexibility that they want at their level, but in a centralized tool kind of thing, or this way, when you have it, you don't have 150 different developers building these tools. That's literally what they had, and that's a great area to identify contracts you can do, because no one knows the work better than the people doing the work. And if you're in there doing something and you can figure out how can you consolidate redundant services, then the government's going to be open to hearing about it. Fixed price contracting, I got in there for a whole different reason. Just so you know, the idea is the government, one of the biggest challenges the government has are contracts that do this. We call it scope creep, or worse for the government, price creep, right? For us, it's bad if they scope creep, putting more work on it for the same price. For them, keep pushing it out, right? You might have heard of Boeing is the biggest example I can think of at the moment. They just got hit again for Air Force One, building the new Air Force One, and they keep stretching it out in time. They keep making it billions more or something. And this is crazy. It's like, how much for the airplane? Okay, I'll pay that, right? That's fixed price. That's what we like to do as consumers. And that's what the government is wanting to see. So try to track on those, figure out how to do it. I don't have this in the training, but it just came to my head and I want to tell you about it. One of my customers is going after a big piece of work, and there's probably going to be like, and when I say big, it's always relative, but it's probably going to be about 30 people, let's say. And in those 30 people, what I suggested to them is actually there's labor categories, things around it. I said, cut off 5 of them. Just instantly cut off 5, and all your competitors are going to be thinking, oh, there's 30 FTEs, and that's what the government is thinking. Well, that's what they're thinking, but they don't really know as well as you. And because AI, and I'll talk about that in a minute, AI and other stuff can enable you to do more with less. Well, then you should be thinking about how to cut that down so you can have a higher profit margin, but a lower price to the government. LPTA should be really profitable to you. It should not be lowest price, technically accepted, least amount of profit to the vendor. That's not what LPTA is supposed to be. It just means lowest price to the government, but you should still make a profit. Well, when you start thinking about fixed price, it enables you to go that direction. And I'm talking about that very loosely, right? I'm not here to debate the different types of contract, but I want you to think about how can you start going after pieces of work that the government looks at the price and the overall cost being the same, not eventually the cost getting larger, making the price larger. All right, asset management and disposition. And if you're not tracking what this means, it's just across the government, there's all sorts of times when they don't know where things are at. If you can basically help them with that, that's a good piece of work to go after. And disposition is this idea of how are they rolling over? How are they moving? You can learn more and more about these examples, but every one of us, including like flooring services or something, we all can look at this and begin to figure out ideas that we can give the government and track on contracts. And by the way, these things I'm talking about are business development. It's how you get in and talk to the customer about your ideas and about identifying work. There's still RFIs and RFPs in SAM and everywhere else that are what the government is deciding, but these kind of things are a big deal. Supply chain optimization, this is huge. The government looks at the supply chain as a national security issue. So you need to be able to look at the supply chain and go, well, how might I be able to contribute to that? This is not everybody, right? But are you on the IT side? You can do digital twins that really help them look at the supply chain and figure out how to make improvements in there. But how can we get what's needed from where it's at to where it needs to be in the least amount of time for the least cost, right? And then the last one is shared services implementation. Really good example on this is what HHS is doing and what they just announced a couple of days ago is they're consolidating, like I mentioned, all of these different divisions into, less divisions, so 28 or so down to 16, I think. And the idea is they also want to come up and centralize a lot of the services. I think there's 15 or 20 CIOs, and they're like, why are we doing this? There's a help desk here and a help desk here type thing. These services they want to consolidate, and this just makes sense, right? There's when you look at these kind of things, but what do you do? And you can consolidate. The government and DOGE is looking at IT and going, hey, we can consolidate IT services. If somebody needs a password reset, they don't need to, every agency within a department doesn't have to have their own help desk. We bring it to one, and probably they could do it with a bot. But what about what you sell? I'm doing this with one of my customers. We're looking at their core competency and we're saying, hey, why don't we just consolidate all of that from the entire federal government into the GSA and have one contract that serves it all kind of thing. And so we're trying to make that push. You need to look at these ideas to get your own company's specific ideas. So anyways, these are just ways to identify contracts that will definitely be kind of DOGE approved, if you will. All right. Oh, really quick. I just want to say thank you to the sponsors. We don't have government funding. I mean, they're probably cutting down on the government funding anyways, but we don't take government funding. But we've done 600, 700 live videos in the last 3 years. We come back year after year, day after day. And it's through the support of people like Graham, Steel Toe, Silk River, who are sponsors of these daily lives. So if you got staffing needs or American Sign Language interpreting needs, talk with Graham. Steel Toe, they do cybersecurity and CMMC, especially if you're trying to get in that backlog of getting certified to be able to work with DOD. That's really important. And then Silk River Capital, they do small business lending for government contractors. In particular, I want you to pay attention to this bottom right-hand one. If you know anybody who's looking for a job, federal employees got laid off, contractors who lost their gig, people outside the government contracting space, I'm working with Graham and Sea Hill Consulting to provide a networking event next week on the 2nd for job seekers. Probably would have been good for me to have a little logo there. So I'll do that next time. Okay, let me get back to the last slide. Okay. One of the things that I think I've been saying this for a couple of years, but it's really important now that we all think about how can we have an emerging technology play in our business. One of the biggest emerging technologies or most visible emerging technology terms is AI, right? AI, ML, but most people don't know what ML is. But artificial intelligence, right? We're all tracking on ChatGPT or whatever. Whatever that tool is that's out there, you really want to be looking at how can you integrate an emerging technology play or an AI play into your company. And all of us can do that. All you have to do is team up with an AI company and they will tell you how they can help you. And together you can go after work in the government. I put a bullet here and I heard this, somebody say this, and I love this line because it just, when they said it, it clicked with me and maybe it'll click with you. And what they said was people keep talking about how jobs are at risk. And it's like, well, it's not the jobs that are like the secretary or the receptionist type things or the mid-level or junior administrative types. What they said was, if you're getting paid $300,000 or $500,000 or $1 million a year, and that might not be anybody on this call, but if somebody's getting paid that, their job is under fire from AI. Because literally, if they're just sitting at a computer and they're getting paid that much, then that's the kind of position that AI is going to be targeting, that super level of savings that they could do there, right? So higher billable rate. And this is really important too, though. If you bring that down a little bit, every one of us, and literally this is me, right? If you're sitting at a computer doing your job basically based on the keyboard, then AI is either an enabler or it's going to be putting you at risk. It's going to put you at risk if you just sit there and continue to do what you're doing. It'll be an enabler if you think about what can you do. So an example is somebody might be able to do videos just like I do, where they do training and they get the AI to do it. But the one thing they're missing is the flair, the experience, the energy that comes with it. The energy I literally get from looking to the side and seeing what day it is, or the fact that I'm on a phone call and my wife is calling me while I'm talking to you. It's like, that's genuine stuff. And that's not going to be, replaced. And that's what I need to remember, is that when I come back, it isn't just the bullets. It's about how can I tie what I'm saying to what just happened today, right? People who use AI to do what I do, and I don't mean just using it to write slides or something. I mean literally their whole video is just AI. People who do that will never have the reality of today. I'm talking to you about Elon Musk and some of these others in DOGE who are talking about stuff. That's because I just watched them yesterday do an interview on Fox News or something. I'm paying attention to what's going on, and I'm able to bring it in. Well, you want to kind of do that same thing, is look at whatever you do if you're sitting behind a computer and go, how can I replace myself with a better version of myself, right? And a better is not a term we need to just talk about, but it just means an AI enabled. How do I go to the next level as a professional, even though I'm behind a computer, right? It's really important that if you don't do that, somebody else will, right? I'm an idea guy and I'm an execution person. And so I can look and go, oh, we should do this. Boom, boom, boom. Let's get it going as fast as possible. Well, that's just business, right? Is trying to provide a better product for the customer. And your product in this case is you and your team. The other thing that I want you to keep in mind is this idea where I say we're transitioning to a startup market or mindset. Back in my last company, and it was all SharePoint, one of the lines I would say over and over, and this is from like 2007 on, I would say I bring a Silicon Valley approach to a DC-based organization. And what I was trying to say is I was innovative and I could move at speed, or my team could move at speed, but we understood the regulations and the bureaucracy and the sensitivity around the mission of the federal government, which is different than Grubhub or something, right? If I go to support them, it's like, it's not the end of the world. But literally people can die in the federal government if you don't do certain things. And so here now, though, DOGE in particular, right? This is not President Trump. I believe it's DOGE and Elon Musk. They're finally able to come in and push what was being done in the Obama administration, where he started something called digital services and they brought Silicon Valley in. Here, it's this next level of phase. And so everybody needs, you and I, we need to have a startup mentality or mindset in the government space. And what a startup mindset means is don't think out 6, 12, 24 months anymore. Start thinking out 6 days, 12 days, right? Fast. Elon Musk is going, man, he goes, what the speed of change is happening very fast, lightning fast. He goes, but it's not even remotely as fast as I'd like it to be. And so when you understand this, and I'm not here to talk about whether we like him or don't like him. I'm saying that's the customer that we have. It's really important to understand that. So ask yourself, how can AI help? And can I get a teammate to help me in there? I just want to wrap up really quick because I'm at the end of time, but 3 things to understand is understand what's essential and related to what you guys sell. So figure that exercise out. Then identify how does AI fit into your company and become part of what you do as an enabler, as your main thing. And then the last thing is respond to more RFIs. One of the hardest things out there is getting visibility. Right now, the easiest way is to respond to an RFI. I just put a post out a few minutes ago. There's more RFIs now than I've ever seen before. So go ahead and check that out. All right, I'm out of here. Remember, government contracting, it's not a secret. It's just a process. I'll see you next time.